Hi, this is Lisa Kelly, Notre Dame author and class of 1993, and you are watching the Two Irish Brothers show. Cheers and go Irish.
Play fake, Clausen back, steps up, caught, oh boy, intercepted, picked off by Goolsby, and he will score. Tipped by Landry, intercepted by Goolsby. Touchdown, Notre Dame, 26 yards.
What's up, everyone? I'm Sean Moriarty.
I'm Benjamin Walters.
And this is the Two Irish Brothers show. Now, as you guys know, as you guys can see, obviously, we have a third person joining us. So without further ado, please welcome the one, the only, former Notre Dame linebacker, Mike Goolsby. What's up, Mike?
What's up, gentlemen? Hope you got room for, it's the Two Irish Brothers. Hopefully you got room for a third tonight. So good for having, thanks for having me.
Not a problem at
Well,
all.
you know, the Two Irish Brothers is the brand, but we have all sorts of people working with us. It's just, you know how it goes.
Sure.
Because I mean, there were three Stooges, but really there were five.
I get it. That's a great, it's a good analogy. Yeah, it's good.
The best I can think of on the fly.
Well, I don't want to be Shemp, right? So I'll stick with Curly.
Well, you know, better to be Shemp than Joe, which was just a clone of Curly. At least
Okay.
Shemp was original.
So I'm not familiar with Joe, but I grew up watching that with my dad when I was a little boy. So yeah, I'm vaguely familiar. That's a throwback.
I just happen to know that by brief research. But anyway, so getting right into business here. Mike, one thing that we like to do whenever we have a former player on is we like to ask a little bit about their history. And we were talking about this off camera, but as most people know who have followed you and follow Notre Dame, you actually got to attend Joliet Catholic in Illinois. Now, as anybody who follows Illinois high school football knows, one of the most prestigious high schools in all the state of Illinois. And one thing that I'd like to ask you is, what was it like going to school there and playing football there?
So you said one of the most prestigious. I do think we hold the record for state championships. We win so many, it's hard to keep up.
Yeah.
The last I checked, it was like 15.
Yeah.
And it's prestigious in the football realm.
Yeah. And
like my partner John Kennedy, we're doing a podcast, and he's like, "Oh, you're one of these, Joliet Catholic boys." Like, it's in, where I'm from. You guys are pretty familiar. Like, it's a very blue collar town. It's a steel town. There's a prison there.
Yeah.
So it's like, we are not a hoity toity kind of community. Very blue collars, my DNA. So, but yeah, I mean, I was fortunate enough they put me in their Hall of Fame, like maybe this time last year, give or take.
That's awesome. That's incredible.
Yeah. It's like a huge honor. And I made a speech, and then I was just like, Joliet Catholic football has been a part of my life basically for like half of my life. And if you've ever been to a game there at the stadium, they've got those little kids playing off to the side, right? They're playing their own little tackle game.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like I was playing for Joliet Catholic before I was ever enrolled, right? As an 8-year-old, in my mind, I'm a hilltopper. So it's just in my DNA. I was so into it, fellas, that when I would go to that game Friday night, I would like bring my own cleats. I can play well.
Awesome.
I had the old Nike Sharks, if you remember those. I don't know how old
the
you guys
Nike
are.
Sharks.
Yeah, so I would bring my own cleats to go play on the little side field with all the other kids. So it was a really impactful thing. We won state there. Really formative for me. I got brought up. I have a September birthday. So I went into high school as a 13-year-old. I got brought up to varsity as a 14-year-old. I'm a 17-year-old freshman at Notre Dame. I never played football tackle, organized tackle before I got there. So the program was great for me in terms of like leadership and learning how to win, how to do things the right way. And, Greg Madison, who recruited me to Notre Dame, that was a big part of his pitch, was like Notre Dame is just a bigger version of Joliet Catholic. The model is kind of the same with the tradition, et cetera.
Mm-hmm. That's awesome.
Well, as we were, like I said, as we were talking more about this off camera before we started going, that 99 season when you guys went all the way,
Yeah.
you guys knocked my alma mater out of the playoffs in the semifinals, Geneseo.
Yeah.
And I found this, Mike, and explain to me what you see here.
Oh yeah.
I don't know who that is on the ground for us. I should know, but see, I didn't go to the game. I was only in 8th grade when that game was played. But yeah, I'm pretty sure you didn't mean this. It was just someone
got
snapping the camera at the right time. But
no,
you clearly dropped.
Yeah, I hurt that kid. I remember I hurt that kid. I was telling you guys off air before we went live. You know, I played inside linebacker sophomore, junior year, and then senior year we played like a bear front, similar to what you see with Al Golden this year, where I was kind of like Marist his role. Like I was sort of an outside linebacker. Well, I played cornerback one game. We played Brent Bazinez and St. Viator, and they went 5 wide. So I played corner one game, and I kind of played this safety. I never got to play inside linebacker, but we had a kid get hurt. So then I got slid inside against Geneseo. So that was the only game my senior year where I got to play my natural position. I remember that play. Yeah, I must have hit that kid on his hip or something. But yeah, I hurt that kid in that picture.
Well, I mean, I know you're just doing your job. You're playing the game, and like I said, when you're looking down at him, I'll bring it back up. Like, be honest. Were you talking some smack?
No, I was never really a shit talker.
Yeah.
You know, there's a few times where in high school, like, you know, you maybe torque a kid's ankle a little bit more than you had to or something like that. Not like in a dirty player, but yeah, I was a really competitive, still am a competitive guy. Yeah. But no, I was never really much of I didn't talk a ton of smack. I mean, you know, and people love to ask that question, Sean. It's like, when you're trying to play, especially middle linebacker, there's so much stuff going on and, you know, checks that you're trying to make in your head where I wouldn't have the wherewithal to be out there trying to think of creative smack to talk, you know?
Yeah. Well, and I'm just giving you a hard time, dude. It just, whoever took that picture, they took it at a point where, you know, no disrespect to whoever that is on the ground. I think it might be, well, I don't want to give his name out, but it just looks like something that it's not.
Yeah.
You know? But no, I remember, because I was in 8th grade when it was your senior year, and I remember so many of our coaches down at Geneseo, I'd hear your name get brought up all the time because, you know, you were being heavily recruited and all that. So actually that leads into the next question. What was the recruiting process like for you coming out of high school? I mean, I'm sure you had a bunch of teams taking a look at you.
Yeah. Yeah. I love to talk about this. And then, I wear a few different hats. So like during the weekends, I train high school kids. Like I kind of pick, I don't know, 5 to 10 kids every year, sort of like higher end kids that have the like ability to go on and play at a high level. So I work with them, you know, really on football specific stuff, teach them how to move, et cetera. And then like to accompany that, I help them with recruiting. You know, if I can open up a door or call a college coach, I'll do that. And then you're almost like a consultant, trying to like, okay, these are things to consider. Maybe go to this camp and not that camp because of X, Y, or Z. You know, talking to kids and their families about building leverage, whatever. And I'm pretty passionate about that, guys, because like when I went through this with my folks, I mean, we could not have been more naive. I mean, I didn't even know I was good. And then it was like, you know, 8 to 12 months later, you're, you know, basically like a 5-star. You got like 30 something scholarship offers, and that seemingly happened overnight. So it was a trip. And then again, with me being young, you know, I should have been held back, you know, because I was so young. I was, you know, 13-year-old freshman in high school. Like 7th graders are 13 years old nowadays, it seems. So, you know, emotionally for me, it was really taxing, you know, and I went through a phase, fellas, where it was like all of these people. And again, mind you, this happened overnight. Strangers were like, where are you going? You know, what school are you picking? Or, you're getting pulled out of homeroom class in high school to go visit with coaches all the time. And it was stressful and it was overwhelming. And I even went through a few days where I was like, who said I'm even going to play college football? Like, nobody's even asked me if I want to play.
Right.
It was all just assumed.
Right.
And I've always been one to question everything. And I was like, nobody's ever asked me if I want to do this. And then I snapped myself out of that. Right. But I would tack it up to being stressful. And, I don't think that my family and I don't think we took full advantage of the opportunities presented. Like, we only took one official visit. We only visited 3 schools unofficially. So we went to like Michigan State, went to Michigan, and went to Notre Dame a dozen times, but never even went to like the U of I, never went to, back then Ohio State was killing it. Miami was killing it. I wish we would have probably done a little bit more. I have no regrets, but I think we could have been a little bit more savvy in hindsight,
Yeah, I think everybody has something in their lives that they wish maybe they could have done a little differently, but I mean, things seem to work out pretty well for it, and you made the choice that you felt was right for you.
Oh, sure. I mean, like I tell people
and it made us happy.
Yeah. Well, people ask, what other schools were you considering? And the only thing I would have said, and in hindsight, I was not aware of, and I don't know if it's really the case now, but the amount of like the stock that the NFL puts in the SEC, it's a very real thing. So, I had an opportunity to go play for several SEC schools, and it's something I wish I would have maybe looked a little bit further into. But that being said, I'm 41 years old now, and it's just like, looking back at your life, your career, relationships, hell, meeting the two of you, like none of this stuff would have happened to me. Or I would have been like blessed enough to do some of this stuff had it not been for Notre Dame. I mean, it's a really difficult school to turn down.
Yeah. Oh yeah, I bet. I mean, they've always seemed to be, and I try to say this as a non-fan, but it's just, you look at a lot of things in the past and even carrying on in today, maybe things have changed a little bit, but especially at that time, they always seem to be ahead of the curve on certain things, like whether it be facilities or take your pick on whatever. But you're right. It'd definitely be a hard place to turn down. I'm sure it still is for a lot of recruits.
Yeah. Well, the last thought on that, and this is something, if you talk about present day Notre Dame football, I was fortunate enough to have Deuce Knight on my YouTube show, briefly talk to our quarterback commit 2025. And I forget all the particulars, but he was talking about how Coach Freeman really preaches choose hard. And that's a slogan that I love. Choose hard.
Yep.
Because Notre Dame isn't the easiest place for a college football player to attend.
No. Yep.
Especially like a guy like me that I wasn't a high academic guy. I didn't like school.
Yeah.
But
same here.
Yeah. I mean, you put yourself through it because coming out of it, you're going to be a better man.
Yeah.
Et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And that's very real. Anytime you challenge yourself, make yourself uncomfortable, you're better off for it.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. That definitely makes a lot of sense.
For sure. I mean, like you saying, choose hard. I mean, I work at a high school. I'm just the janitor, but I can tell you that there are 2 types of athletes. There are the athletes that really want it, and then there are the athletes who are just doing something to do something. And I have the regular kids where it's 7, 8, 9 o'clock at night, football practice is over. It's time to be home, either, with the family or having dinner or whatever. And there's kids in the weight room lifting weights, or there's a basketball player that's shooting hoops or what. I mean, those are the kids that want it. Those are the kids that are choosing the hard path as opposed to the easy path where it's you do just enough, you go to practice, all that kind of stuff. So, yeah.
No, that's true. And again, being involved with high school athletes still to this day, you make a great point, Ben. Because sometimes I'll train kids there's like a public field here in Omaha where it's always open, especially during the summer. And there'll be kids that'll go out there and they'll put music on. They bring their duffel bag full of bands. And like, of course they have a Bluetooth speaker. They put on the hip hop and you'll watch them stretch or whatever, take a selfie for Snapchat, and then they'll get up and fricking go home. And I'm like, they're gonna broadcast that they're out there, on their grind, Ben. But I'm watching you. You didn't do boo.
Right.
So there's that's a very real thing you see with young kids. They want to project the work but they're not doing it, working in silence. Right.
Mm-hmm.
But it is encouraging to hear what you're saying, Ben, and that kids still want to be great.
Yeah.
And that's something like, I grew up like wanting to be the best. I wanted to be great. It was really difficult or hard on yourself. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, the high school I work at, it's the rougher of our 2 high schools in our district and stuff, and I mean, some of them kids, they get themselves out of bad situations. We had a young man that, he had a really bad home life. He was at school till 9-10 o'clock every night because it was better than going home and dealing with that bowl that he had to deal with. And he ended up getting a full ride playing football and got himself out of that problem,
I love that.
And it was incredible to see him. And he was quiet, one of the quietest kids out of all the football players, like super humble, super respectful and nice, not a loudmouth, and like every night lifting weights, studying plays, all that kind of stuff. And it's like, that's what you get. He was able to pick himself up out of that bad situation and do that. And he had good role models. I mean, like our coaches and stuff at the school I work at, they preach, you're a student athlete. You're not just a player, you're a student athlete. You got to get your grades up. You got to keep up with school. You got to have a good reputation. People are going to look at those kinds of things when you get out in the real world.
No, it's true.
Something that we know about with Notre Dame. Notre Dame, prepares a lot of people and a lot of not just football players, but basketball players and just students in general for life. I mean, it's, their reputation precedes them big time.
Yeah, it's a couple thoughts to add on there, Ben. There was a young man. So I moved to Omaha, I don't know, 6-7 years ago. I'd yet to start training kids. I'm still getting my bearings with, my job, everything else, living in a new city. And I'm in dental sales. So I sell to dentists. There was a woman I met. She's a dental assistant. She finds out my background with sports or whatever. And she's like, yeah, I train kids. She's like, oh, you should train my son. He's a really good football player. He's really fast. I'm like, okay, great. So we go have a slice of pizza so I can meet the kid. Started training him his sophomore, junior, senior year. His name's Avante Dickerson. So Avante ends up being a top 100 player, top 10 corner. I turned him into a corner. He was a wide receiver when he met me. And I trained him for free, right? Single mom, et cetera. You'd pick him up from the house or whatever. And then he had a mentor with the Omaha Police Department, Lieutenant Ken Fox. So Lieutenant Ken Fox and I kind of partnered up. And then I got a grant so I could basically train underserved kids for free. If they need to go to a camp or get a flight out for a visit, or if they need a new pair of cleats or whatever, like I can pay for it for them. So yeah, because a lot of these kids that love football, a lot of these kids need, whether it's football, basketball, sports, or whatever, it's definitely a gateway for them. And if they can have a mentor in their life that can kind of guide them or steer them, it's awesome. But in regards to the Notre Dame piece, like I'll look at like a Justin Tuck, who we all know, Justin Tuck. Damn near won. Yeah, I mean, well, he damn near won the Super Bowl MVP. He had 2.5 sacks against Tom Brady. But like Justin Tuck is from a town of like 1,000 people in rural Alabama, Kellyton, Alabama. And you look at where Justin Tuck came in as a true freshman with that thick Southern drawl to like where he is at now in his life. And I'm sure Justin will be the first one to tell you, like, none of that happens without Notre Dame, because it really can be life-changing. Not that any of these kids are bad kids or whatever, but it's just, you see success, you're surrounded by success, and it can really help shape you.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. It gives them that motivation to do better than where they are right now and see how far they can go.
Yeah.
Notre Dame pushes you. It doesn't matter where you're from, I didn't go to Notre Dame, obviously, but I mean, just hearing, people like Lisa Kelly and stuff talk about Notre Dame, they push you. I mean, they make you a better person. Everybody around you is incredible.
I mean, I almost failed out my freshman year. Again, I'm 17 years old. I made the travel team. I'm lettering. And I had like a 1.7 something GPA after my first semester. I mean, I was this close to failing out. Could you imagine? And just not that I was a bad kid or was getting into trouble. I was just like, dude, I was, barely keeping my head above water. So I was in study hall. I mean, I was in study hall for 4 years until like 10 p.m., just grinding. And then I've gotten into a lot of conversations with people at a lot of different bars over the Saturdays, right? And you'll be at a bar watching, shoulder to shoulder with an Ohio State fan.
Mm-hmm.
And then people hate Notre Dame, fellas. You know this. You either love Notre Dame, or you hate Notre Dame.
Yeah.
And like, okay, so you're such a diehard.
Yep.
But you sit there and go, why would anybody hate Notre Dame? We do everything literally the right way. Like, everybody graduates, everybody gets a degree, everybody gets an opportunity to network. And it's like, so if you're an Ohio State fan or if you're an LSU fan, you name the marquee program that doesn't graduate kids. It's like, well, what the hell are you rooting for? What do you stand for as a fan? Just football excellence. But then it's almost those schools. We'll use Ohio State because to hell with Ohio State. Ohio State,
there you go.
Ohio State sells that NFL dream to their kids, right? So those kids are trying to use like Ohio State to get to the league. But if the bottom falls out for most kids, I mean, it's a small miracle to make it to the NFL. And it's an even, smaller miracle to be like successful and come out with tens of millions of dollars.
Right. And
it's just, it's I don't know if manipulative is the right way, but it's definitely a little gross to me. The school's trying to use it's always bugged me. It's always bugged me why anybody would, have disdain or root against the Notre Dame when we're out here being incredibly competitive and, doing the right things and putting young men and young women academically, athletically on the right path.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, we hear it said all the time, Notre Dame is not just a 4-year plan, it's a 40-year plan. But to add on to that point, we had Irv Smith on the show, like one of our first year since Ben and I joined forces. We had Irv Smith on the show for about 20 minutes or so. And one of the things that he told us in regards specifically to the NFL that every student athlete needs to remember, his version, his what you call it for the NFL, he calls it not for long. So you got to remember that you're not going to play football forever, whether you play for 1 year or for 15 years. It's not going to last forever, and you better have something that you're going to go into when your playing days are over. So that makes a lot of sense.
No, I had family playing the NFL. And I mean, it's a tough road to hoe. I mean, it is, it's
a very, very, very tough way to make a living.
I mean, it's
in the game now. So like back when I was coming out, they would say the average NFL career was around 3 years.
Mm-hmm.
And I think now it's like 1.8 years. I mean, like back then you used to be able to get like a guy like me that was like a fringe guy. I'm maybe going to make the team. I got 1 foot in, 1 foot out. Now these teams, like they've adjusted the rosters. So now, like you just saw, Julio Jones just got signed to a practice squad. Julio Jones, who's a Hall of Famer, is now on a practice squad.
Right.
I don't like that. But then the other thing is too about that 4 for 40 thing, and I probably didn't realize this till later in life, but like a degree from Notre Dame, even a guy like me, I was a team captain. It's not as if you get out into the real world and your phone's just blowing up with people that want to hire you, et cetera.
Right.
Like if you make it work, if you have to put in the work to make the thing work for you.
Yes.
You can't just sit idle.
Yes.
Right. And I think a lot of guys, I talked to Aaron Taylor, who's a Notre Dame legend, and all of us, ex-jocks, you go through that process of trying to re-identify yourself. A lot of guys start drinking, et cetera, as you're kind of licking your wounds. And, that's something I wish I could tell my younger self, is just to be like, don't be afraid to stick your neck out and go meet people.
Yeah.
And, everybody that meets you is going to be proud of your achievements, even though maybe you didn't play for 10 years like you thought you were going to, 15, 16 years old.
Yeah.
People are willing to put your arms around you. You just got to be a little bit vulnerable and put yourself in that kind of position,
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it doesn't matter if you, like I said, it doesn't matter if you play for 1 year or 15. I mean, I'm sure there's millions of players out there that would have loved to have played for just 1 year. And
oh, sure.
But
Yeah.
but the fact is they accomplished, even if you just got to like a practice squad, or you didn't, or let's say you didn't play in the NFL at all, you still did more than what a lot of people did. And you did everything you did everything you possibly could to hunt down your goals and your dreams.
Yeah, no doubt. Again, but it's easy to say if you've never been in that position. And I fully appreciate that now. But yeah, there's almost a degree of, for lack of a better word, boys, it's like shame. You almost feel ashamed that you didn't quote unquote make it. And it's like nobody else looking at any of us ex-players that go through that process, and everybody does to some degree.
Yeah. Well, and
nobody looking at you thinks that other than the person you're looking at in the mirror. It's wild, right? So that's like with my young kids that I train now. I've been fortunate enough. I trained one kid that's gone on in the league, plays for the Kansas City Chiefs, Nick Allegretti. But like my kid Avante, the corner I mentioned, like he has an NFL skill set. He has NFL traits, NFL DNA, etc. And all these kids, like when they think about playing in the NFL, they think about being a first-round pick and going out there with the commissioner and all that. And it's like, there is nothing wrong with being a fifth-round pick. The league minimum now is $750. And it's just like, go play for a couple years, run down on kickoff team, and then start your life at 23, 24 years old with $1 million in the bank. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
like,
right.
Granted, you might not be a Hall of Famer, maybe a Pro Bowl or whatever, but it's like you're starting your life way ahead.
Yeah.
Yeah, and if you invest that money just right, you'll be set.
Oh, well, exactly.
I mean, it's and you make a good point. It's with the shame thing, as men and even boys, boys becoming men, in the high school and into college and stuff. Everything like with us is like, with the way society is, it's like your self-worth, and it's like, what kind of car do you drive? What kind of house do you have? What kind of, it's like all these things, and it's like we fall into that trap of like basing our self-worth over like some of our quote unquote achievements, and like you were saying with these kids and stuff, it's like you want to be a first-round pick. Well, not everybody's going to be a first-round pick, and that's okay. Like it doesn't make you a loser for being a first-round pick. You got drafted in the 5th round. You got drafted. Like that's incredible. How many players go in the draft? What, like 250
something?
Quick math, sure.
50 or whatever. I mean, it's like out of 1,000. Like that's what, like 5%, 10%, something like that. I mean, it's
which takes you back to that Notre Dame, and it's not even the Notre Dame education as a piece of it, but it's really the Notre Dame experience is really what it comes down to.
Yeah, no, you're right. And my wife is not. I tell Sean this. I bring this up on my videos all the time. My wife is not in sports. Like I'm the sports person. I played multiple sports in high school. I follow a team in every kind of sport imaginable and stuff, multiple leagues. She stepped foot on Notre Dame for the first time probably 2-3 years ago, and she felt that specialness. Like she stepped on there and she's like, wow, this is a really special place. And I'm like, like this is an incredibly special piece of this country. Like nothing prepares you for it until you actually step on that campus and feel the specialness of it.
Yeah, and that's another thing that, right? I mean, hindsight's 20/20, right? Distance. I like to say distance gives you clarity to a lot of things, and when you're in the throes of it, when you're in the thick of it as a player, you're going to some 5 a.m. workout, right? And it's like you absolutely lose sight of how fortunate and how blessed you are and how special this whole experience is. I went to the Ohio State game with a buddy, whatever it was, a month ago now. And I'm like walking into the stadium and I got a little choked up. And I was like, I can't believe I got to do this. Like, it's amazing. And then another interesting thing that I didn't realize, and this sounds silly to say out loud, but like you're so insulated when you're playing that I didn't realize how big of a deal college football is and was until I was done playing. I was like, all these people are here to watch a game, and like, it sounds silly to say that out loud, but when you're like an 18-year-old kid, you got your blinders on. And then when you can come out of it, you're like, yeah, man, what a cool sport. What a cool place to be. And I mean, you could be Elon Musk and you can't pay, to be on the field playing in front of 100,000 people. Right. You just can't do it.
No, I can myself, that would have been awesome for me to do, but I just have to settle for watching it. But I can imagine that. I can imagine that. Like, man, I just played in front of 100,000 people. How do you process that?
I mean, like, probably 20 years after the fact, probably 20 years after the fact, it's just like, the only, like, I can remember, I thought I would have redshirted my freshman year during my recruitment just because of my age. I was, when I was a sophomore, there were freshmen on the team that were older than I was. So, like, Notre Dame, as you guys know, we make our schedule years out, right?
Right.
And when they were recruiting me in high school, Notre Dame, I kind of circled that Tennessee game because I just knew Tennessee had a big stadium.
Mm-hmm.
And like, I'm like, I can't wait to play at Tennessee. This is going to be crazy. And then you end up having like the game of your life in that environment. And it's just like, and this is a fun story. So when I went to the Dallas Cowboys, they had a linebacker who's a second-round pick, Kevin Burnett, who was a two-time captain at Tennessee. Great player. And he was told by his center, he was like, that's the loudest, that game. He goes, that's the loudest I ever heard that stadium. And he said his center told him that the ball was shaking on the ground because of the noise. And I'm like, damn, Yeah.
Well, I remember watching that game very well. I was 18 years old, and I was at the time I was working for a pizza parlor because I was just a year removed from high school, was trying to make some money, get my life started essentially. And I remember getting dressed for my shift, and you had that pick six off of Rick Clausen, and I just remember, yes, I'm giving a visual here, but I was jumping around like a little freaking schoolgirl. I'm like, Goolsby just picked it off and ran it back. Hey.
Yeah, it was cool. And like back then, this is showing my age, but like back then, I didn't even get a cell phone until like my senior year. I had a college girlfriend. And I just didn't want her bothering me all the time, right?
Yeah.
So begrudgingly, I eventually got a cell phone. And then I remember like going out to the bus and like turning my phone on, and I had like 170 text messages or something from people back home and all that stuff. And I was like, that was one of those moments where you're like, damn, because again, back to like having your blinders on, like you not that you forget, but like it makes you realize that how many people are that care about you and are paying attention, and you're making them proud and all that stuff. It's just, it's, the very, very, very cool experience.
Yeah. That's why we go, I mean, we're called homers constantly, everybody, has something to say about that, but that's why, like, it's so hard for me to like be truly like mad, like when Notre Dame loses or has a bad game or whatever. It's like, dude, these kids, they work so freaking hard. There's so many things that go into it. Like I said, I had a family member play in the NFL for a minute, and like it was cool because I got to experience a little bit of his college experience and stuff.
Yeah.
And I mean, he went to a smaller school. He played at Kansas. But like the amount of work that he had to put in, the amount of things that I saw him do and stuff, it's like people just don't quite grasp that. And it's like these kids pour their heart and soul and their blood and sweat and tears into a program like Notre Dame, nonetheless, that's just like at the center focal point of the college football world. I mean, even on a bad year, down year, whatever, Notre Dame's 4 and whatever, they're still the focal point of the.
No, it's true, Ben. It's true.
You can be 4 and whatever as Bowling Green, and nobody gives a rat's ass.
And I think it's because, I think Notre Dame embodies success.
Yeah.
Right. And like, I'm the type of person, I root for success, right? If I see somebody driving a, $110,000 car, I'm like, damn, like good for that person,
Right.
That's the way I'm wired.
Yeah.
So Notre Dame embodies success. So if Notre Dame has a down year, people love to just stomp on you, right? And it's been interesting, what Coach Freeman's kind of brought to the program, and Sam Hartman to a degree too, is like the national attention. People are watching Notre Dame football. Like I'm sure you've seen some of those numbers, in terms of eyes on the TV, and that wasn't always the case.
Yeah.
And I think we owe quite a bit of gratitude for Coach Freeman for kind of maybe starting to kind of shift that narrative a little bit, right? I mean, to get back to, Like Sam Hartman's basically a star. I think Audric Estime is like a borderline star.
Mhm.
And when you think about like when I kind of became a Notre Dame fan watching those Lou Holtz teams, you had a bunch of stars: Tim Brown, Zorich, Stonebreaker, all the running backs, Ricky Waters, Bettis, etc. Rocket Ishmael. That's kind of my hope for Notre Dame as we continue to build with Coach Freeman, is you get some would-be celebrities on the team that bring more fans into the fold, that can grab a young Benjamin, can grab a young Sean, and you become a fan, right?
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. And this is kind of off that a little bit, but you just said that you grew up watching Notre Dame. You were a fan, correct?
Well, to be clear, I grew up where I grew up, we didn't have cable TV. And I was super active. Like I was always outside,
Mhm.
I remember there's a sports writer. I'm sure I don't even know if he's still with us, but this guy's name was Taylor Bell, who wrote for I think the Sun Times, the Chicago Sun Times. And he interviewed me. I'm the number one player in the state. And he was asking me about my different offers and all this. And I was like, is Indiana in the Big Ten? Like, I didn't know. Like, because I didn't really pay that close of attention to I like playing sports, but I wasn't like, I didn't know all the stats and all of that.
Right.
And then what's even funnier is I grew up wanting to play in the NFL. And I didn't even think about college. Like, I didn't really even think about college until I maybe got to like, I don't know, 8th grade or something. I had a conversation with my dad, like, you need to get a scholarship. We can't afford to send you to school. And he got into like how competitive it is. It's not good enough to just be the best kid in your class at Joliet Catholic. You have to be the best kid in the area. And then you have to be the best kid in the state. And you have to be the best kid in the country. And I was like, ding, 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 ding. And then I went to work.
Okay.
But that was probably the most important conversation I've ever had, because we were watching, this is true. So I was watching, it was Marshall Falk. So obviously we got cable later on in life again. So I didn't grow up, but Marshall Falk was on at San Diego State.
Mhm.
They had those black and orange uniforms. I was just captivated. And I was like, I want to go to San Diego State. My dad was like, I said, I'm going to San Diego State. He's like, no, you're not. My mother and I can't afford to send you to school.
Right.
He goes, you need a scholarship. And he goes, if you get one scholarship, that's where you're going. He's like, if you get more than one scholarship, then you get a choice. And then he went into the level of competition, et cetera. But I didn't necessarily grow up a Notre Dame fan, but my grandmother, my dad's mother, Grandma Goolsby, like her family was off the boat Irish immigrants. My grandpa, so her father, Grandpa Seeley, was, I guess back in the day, he was like 6'10". So like you're talking like the 1900s.
Yeah.
He's like a giant.
Yeah.
That's where we got our size from. But like every Christmas, sorry for the long answer, Sean, but
No, it's all right.
Like every Christmas, you get your Notre Dame sweatshirt or something like that. So because of my grandparents, that's really the only reason I was familiar with Notre Dame. But I wasn't like glued to the TV as a little kid, if that makes sense.
Right.
Oh, yeah, it does. And the reason I asked that question, and maybe you've had this conversation with some of your teammates or any other athlete, I don't know. But the reason I asked that is because I think of where all Notre Dame recruits from. And like you get a lot of Florida guys, and California, Texas is starting to come up a little bit. I'm willing to bet that not a lot of these guys cheered for Notre Dame growing up. Like, let's take the Florida guys for example. 3 top programs there to choose from: Florida State, Miami, the Florida Gators. I guess in a situation like that, where if you're being recruited by a team that you didn't cheer for, I'm just curious how one would approach that. Like, okay, I grew up watching Florida State, but Notre Dame's coming in. They really want me, but I didn't like them growing up. I liked the Florida Gators. How do you go about that? Like, how would you go about that if that was your case, if that was your situation?
So now, are you asking me how would I go about that as the recruit or as the coach, the / recruiter?
As the recruit, like, okay, like I want to go to, I was a fan of Florida, but Notre Dame's making me a great pitch. I'm wanting to go there. Like, would it be hard? I guess what I'm asking is, would it be hard for you playing against or playing for a team that you did not cheer for growing up? or is that kind of an irrelevant factor in the recruiting process?
I think it should be irrelevant. I think it should be irrelevant. But yeah, it gets, if I went down, like, and again, working with athletes, high school athletes to this day, the things that are kind of taken into consideration is like location, academics, probably relationship with the recruiter, probably recent success of any given program, right? Facilities kind of matter. But yeah, that geography, especially pulling kids out of the South, Sean, is difficult. It's, the weather is a thing, Yeah, that's a really interesting question. I mean, that's just going to come down to the recruiter being able to, like, probably make some assumptions about a kid. There's a kid that I'm working with now, and he's not a Division I kid. He's probably a D2 type kid. And I was talking to Peru State, their defensive coordinator. He's like, tell me about his family. He's like, this recruiter, before he contacts this kid, is trying to gather as much intel as he can, Sean, to sort of craft his pitch towards that specific athlete. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. It does.
So, but yeah, I think once you get there, if you pick a Tennessee, or if you pick if I would have picked, a Kentucky, picked a South Carolina, or picked a Miami or whatever, once you get there, I think your previous fandom goes out the window for sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because I've always wondered like that. I wondered about that. Like, if it was a kid from California who grew up watching USC and then he goes to Notre Dame and plays against USC, like,
no.
You'd think that would kind of screw with his mind.
No, that's gone. I mean, I'm telling you, that's eliminated immediately. That's eliminated. I mean, because once you get there, you can go back to being a true freshman. Yeah. And, you're in your first training camp, calling home in tears because you're getting your ass kicked every day. It's like you bond with your classmates immediately, and it almost becomes about, our little core group, and then we kind of expand. The team brings us into the fold. I mean, as a player, it's really about your teammates. Yeah. It's your teammates. It's not even really your coaches. You don't see a lot of your coaches. I mean, you see your strength team, your strength staff. But no, any prior fandom. Oh, well, this is interesting. So there's a kid Notre Dame's recruiting. His name's Carter Nelson. He's from Nebraska. Freakazoid. He's an NFL kid all day long. Just has he's got the traits. Yeah. And he's from like middle of nowhere, 5 hours like northwest of here in Ainsworth, Nebraska. He plays 8-man high school football. Grew up a diehard Husker fan. I think his dad has like a Husker tattoo or something like that. And he's committed to go to Nebraska. Now, he was at the USC game on a visit. And I sit there and go, well, just because you were born into this Husker fandom, right, is that fair to the kid? And I would say that if some kid grew up in a Notre Dame household, right, is that a reason he couldn't look at a Michigan? It's the kid's decision. Right. And in our fandom typically gets passed down through generations, right? So like with that Carter Nelson thing, I'm like, man, if he becomes a starting tight end at Notre Dame, he's going to the league, and like we're going to pass up that opportunity because we grew up in Nebraska. It's just, that'll never compute to me.
Yeah. Yeah, no, yeah. I mean, being someone that obviously isn't recruited or anything, I had, like I mentioned a couple times now, I had family playing the NFL, and I was given trouble because like all of a sudden I'm rooting for like the New England Patriots, And obviously then it was when the New England Patriots were that dynasty. I mean, Tom Brady was at, the top of his game. And I mean, they were just the team to beat. And I was getting in trouble from people. And it's like, dude, I have a family member who currently is on the roster. Like, what do you want me to do here? You want me to not to root for him? Like, I mean, this is incredible. Like, and then he was off that roster. And then the next year, I think he was with the Packers or something. And it's like, and now I'm rooting for the Packers. It's like people give me such a hard time. It's like, but I have that loyalty to him and to like his career, and it's exciting to watch him play and see what he's doing. And
so that you make an interesting point, Ben. So like if a Carter Nelson left his small town in Nebraska and went to a Notre Dame or went to an Alabama or went anywhere, that hometown is still going to root for that kid.
Right. Exactly.
If he's playing for Nick Saban in Alabama, believe me, they're going to be tuning into CBS watching the Tide, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I mean, with me, it was like really? Like, yeah, I was a Rams fan. Yeah, New England beat us on a field goal and pretty much end the dynasty that Kurt Warner had. Like, yeah, no, it's the loyalty's there with my family and my friend. You know, it's like, yeah, it's weird how people are with all that, but
Yeah, fandom is
Well,
what it
and
is.
yeah.
Well, I'm kind of in the same boat that you were talking about, Mike. You said that kid played 8-man football. Well, I've got a nephew here in Illinois that's playing 8-man football, and he's being recruited not by any top schools or anything like that. But I told him once, I'm like, hey, press, even if you were to get that good and go to say a Michigan or Purdue or wherever, I'm gonna be just as proud of you, bud. I may not sport that team's colors, but I'll be proud of you and I'll be cheering for you and I'll have your back all the way.
Yeah. Well, if you went to, so let's just say that hypothetical, if that kid goes to play at Purdue, since you use that, would you go there wearing Notre Dame gear? Or would you have some Boilermaker gear on?
You would have to have some the colors at least. Maybe not a jersey, but I'd wear like a gold shirt or something.
No, you got it bad, man. You got it bad. Yeah. No, I mean, yeah, some of the kids, like I've got kids that play for the Huskers that I train. When I go to a Husker game, I'm wearing a Husker shirt. I don't care. It doesn't mean, it means nothing. I'm supporting.
Yeah, people don't understand. Yeah, people don't understand that aspect until you're actually in that aspect and that realm. It's right. Different. It's like,
and even if like in that scenario, because I'm pretty close with a handful of these kids. Like I'm really close with them. And let's just say that hypothetical scenario, like a Nebraska, where I have a couple kids that I've trained, a couple kids that I'm pretty close with. You're kind of a mentor figure for them. If they played a Notre Dame in a bowl game or something like that, I would be rooting for Notre Dame, but I would want my kid to play well.
Right.
Does that make sense? So there's nuance.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
absolutely.
No,
and of course, my nephew, of course, I just like to tease him about that. But no, if it meant wearing those colors to support him, then yeah, absolutely.
It's not like you're taking anything away from your fanhood with whoever you root for. That's my thing. It's like, that's something I try to tell people, like when my cousin was playing and stuff. It's it's not like I'm not a fan of this team anymore and I just like totally jumped ship and I'm never no. Like he's with them and I'm rooting for him and them because of this. Like that's anyway. Yeah.
It's your blood, man. It's your blood.
It's it's incredible stuff though. And it's cool seeing these kids go places. Like, I mean, it's and the growth. You see these kids come in at this weight or this height, and then you see them become bigger and stronger and more savvy with certain things and all that. And like, I see it. I've been, at the high school I'm about to hit my 8th year. And I mean, now I've had 2 classes of kids basically come through, and I can tell you, like, the athletes I've seen when they come in as freshmen, and then I've seen as they're leaving as a senior, and like their maturity level, their smarts, their strength and stuff. It's incredible to watch it like continue to grow and watch them become a better person.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's what sports teaches some of these kids. And it's interesting now, like when you really get into the training with kids and how football has evolved, like, even since like the 90s, kind of when I was coming up, like, I was a 250-pound inside linebacker and I could still run, but like, I'd be playing defensive end right now, and like, there's still, especially like in the Midwest, I think there's still remnants of like that NFL films, like, big tough guys, football player guys, and anymore football is just, you turn on the TV any Sunday, and I love to use Travis Kelce as an example. Like if you look at Travis Kelce in pads, he's a big man, big frame, et cetera, big hands or whatever, but he's fluid, but he doesn't even look like he does curls. I mean, it doesn't even look like he lifts weights, but he's just that good of an athlete. So, kids do need to like lift weights and develop in that way, but developing like fluidity, hip flexibility, burst, all of that, that's really what coaches are looking for, is how does a player move? Mm-hmm. And like, so you could see some of the kids that like, specifically Jalen Sneed, Benjamin Morrison, Boubacar Traore, they're long, they're fluid, they move different than maybe some, kids from like prior recruiting classes. Because that's what football's kind of turning into basketball on a football field in terms of the body types and the athletes, right? So, and the kids that I train, I've never had a college coach ask me what a kid bench presses or what a kid squats or what they deadlift. Like, they don't care. They want to know how fast they are and how do they move.
That's all secondary stuff.
It's all second. I mean, you got to lift weights. It shows commitment, all that stuff. But in terms of like what they're looking for, what they're targeting, it's movement skills. It's not, lifting numbers.
Yeah, because I mean, you're playing football. You're not. This isn't a weightlifting competition. So that makes perfect
No,
sense.
I think you lift weights to stay healthy.
Yeah.
You lift weights to stay healthy. And I think I always prided myself on like mental toughness as a player. And it's like, if you get yourself in top shape in terms of like your cardio, your wind, and you're healthy in the weight room, you've been stretching, doing all those things. Like, if you do get nicked up, if you get a little bit of a nick, that same mental toughness that allowed you to get in such peak shape is what's going to allow you to play through that injury. Mm-hmm. If you never get in peak shape, that nick is going to turn into something bigger, and then you don't have the mental toughness to play through it. Right? Hopefully that makes sense.
Yeah.
No, crystal clear, man. I get what you're saying.
Yep.
Yeah. So that's everything.
Now, one thing I did want to ask you about when kind of in regards to like developing and all that, when you got to Notre Dame, it was near the end of Bob Davies' career. So you played for
2 years with Davey.
2 years under him.
2 years with Davey, 3 days with George O'Leary, if you remember that debacle. And then I was with Willingham for 3 years. I started my junior year, sat out my senior year. I was hurt. I broke my collarbone a couple times and had surgery on my other shoulder, and then played a 5th year with Willingham.
That's right. Yeah, well, at least you can say this about George O'Leary. He was undefeated as a Notre Dame head coach.
Yeah. Wow.
But I wanted to ask, what I wanted to ask you, Mike, was what was the transition like between both those coaches, between Davey and Willingham? Like, was there anything different? Anything that was, I don't know.
Yeah, so I'll say this.
Unusual.
It's a good question. I think Davey was more of just a ball coach. It was a lot of preparation. It was a lot of just ball. Long practices, would protect his players. He would keep us out of trouble. If you did get in trouble, he would try to like get you out of trouble. I was never in trouble. Coach Willingham called me the Teflon Don once. He's like, I always hear your name attached to different stuff, but he's like, I can never pin you for it. I'm like, well, I'm good, coach. But Willingham, as opposed to just being ball, he was more about like life. I think fans called him like a molder of men. I think he might have said that in a press conference, and fans grabbed onto it. And I always struggle with that because I was like, I'm blessed to have – I have 2 great parents. Yeah, I grew up – I went to Catholic school, kindergarten, all the way through college, as it turned out. Like, I didn't need another mentor. I didn't need a father figure. I just wanted to win frickin' football games and get to the league. So if you're asking, Sean, that's probably the difference is Davey was just straight up football, and then Willingham wanted to be your daddy. And that's like, I don't need another dad. Help me. Let's win some games.
Yeah.
Well, that's just what I was asking. To see the difference between those, like, because when you transition from coach to coach, like a coach gets fired, new one comes in. Like, I always wondered how it affects the players, and because it's easy.
Dude. Yeah, dude. I'm
easy to be on the outside looking in.
I'm a very transparent person, which is why I think I found some success in this like world of podcasting. But like Willingham's first team meeting as our new head coach, mind you, I was a pretty heavily recruited kid. I hadn't started yet. And Willing came in, he was talking a bunch of bullshit, like whatever. And I'm like, whatever he was trying to sell us, I wasn't buying this. I was like, and then I remember I can truly remember having that internal dialogue with myself, sitting in the chair being like, this guy's full of shit. But I was like, I got to go along with it because I haven't started yet. Like, I have to buy in, as it were. But I'm like, let's just get to the football. Let's get to football. Not what do we talk? It was like quotes of the day type stuff, And he told us, and he probably said this in the media at some point, but he told us when he was a walk-on at Michigan State, he would throw 1,000 passes a day after practice. And you sit there and you're like, okay, I'm not an idiot. How long would it take you to throw 1,000 passes? Think about that. To sit there and throw 1,000 balls.
Right.
First of all, your arm would fall off. And I'm like, why are you bullshitting, dude? Like, I don't believe you. So then when you lead with stuff like that, you lose credibility to me as a player. Does that make sense?
Yeah. What do you think his intentions were at least good though, even though it came off as kind of, well, what you just said?
I mean,
or do you think?
I mean, I think his intentions were good, but I mean, he wasn't a good ball coach. I mean, that sort of bared itself out when he left. I don't think he won a game in 2 years at Washington. So I think he was a bit of a figurehead. I think he was a bit of a talking head. And he had some bad assistant coaches, so I just call it like I see it. I mean, he wasn't a great football coach.
Yeah, the numbers bear that out. The numbers bear that out. He had some moments, but overall, it was not the best coaching job.
Well, it's just this is another. I'll tell you 2 stories.
Okay.
So we're talking about, Ben, you were talking about how difficult college football is, college athletics is. Your heart, mind, and soul you have to put into this venture. So there was, you're tired a lot. I was tired a lot. I had to live in a dorm for 3 years because I didn't have the grades to get off campus. So that you're not getting the best sleep in a dorm. You have some roommate that's a non-athlete. And so occasionally, I'd sleep in and skip a class. And I wasn't like I was partying the night before. I'm up playing video games at 8 o'clock in the morning, choosing not to go to class. It's like I needed sleep, right?
Right.
You know what I mean? Like I need the sleep.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And then, so what was your punishment for missing class? You'd have to get up early and go run. And he'd make you run backwards. And I'll never forget, I was at the indoor facility, whatever it was, 6 a.m., and what's Coach Willingham doing? He's hitting golf balls into a net while I'm sitting there running. And I'm just like, F this guy. He's mocking me. And there's another story like that really happened.
Unbelievable.
It was maybe my junior year, and I didn't really quite know what I was doing. Like I knew my job most of the time, but a lot of it was just effort and instincts just flying around. And he was rollerblading. I don't know if you remember, he would rollerblade. But he was rollerblading back to the coach's office, and he was walking with me. So I'm walking, he's rollerblading. And he was telling me about like preparation, watching film, and I had never been taught how to watch film. And he had a moment, and I can say this now as like a mentor to young athletes. He had a moment to bring me into that football office and sit down with me and watch tape, and he didn't. He told me what I needed to do, but never took the time to show me. And I always thought that was a little messed up. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, that is messed up. But I it's hard for me to picture him on rollerblades. Golf, I believe, because
he's famous for it.
I guess I had forgotten that. The first question I got to ask is, in your whole career, who hit you the hardest?
I don't know. So I had like 6, major concussions probably at Notre Dame. And I can remember there was one play against, I don't remember the guy's name. It was some guard from Michigan. And I came downhill and I got kind of caught in the gap. And I'm caught in the gap and I could just see, here comes this pulling guard. And he just just teed off on the side of my head. That was like one of the hardest hits I've ever taken. We had a fullback way back in the day, number 40, Jason Murray, was like 265. It was just like dense. Like if you told me he was made of lead, I would have believed you. Just so dense. He was a big hard hitter. But a player like a Jeff Fain, I mean, I was intimidated by Jeff Fain. He was just a monster. And then when I got to the NFL, there was a guy named Larry Allen, who's a Hall of Famer, number 73. Yeah. I mean, the guy could bench press, 750. He would warm up with 315 on the bar, 3 plates on each side.
That's it.
So those the 2 players that I ever played against that I was fearful of, or lined up with, or was on the shared a field with, Larry Allen and Jeff Fain, because they were just built different. They really were.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's awesome because it's a buddy of mine at work was wanting me to ask you that. So
Well, they did then I'm going back to Larry Allen, but like they did in Dallas played a 3-4 defense back there. So as an inside linebacker, I'm not covered up, right? So you got your ends, I got a nose, so that guard can just roll off on you. You're supposed to hat and hands,
Mm-hmm.
and they would do this drill where it was a practice full padded thing where you'd have to hit Larry Allen. And there's a linebacker that we had. He went to Duke, real thick, strong white dude. And they did that drill, and it's only like 3 yards of distance. So it's not like a full, and he hit Larry Allen and did a backward somersault. Like that's how hard Larry Allen hit him. And then I was in line to do that drill, and I just kept going back further in the line. Like I was like, "Where's Larry at?"
Right.
I'm not going against him. And they used to say, "Did you guys remember Roy Williams, the safety from Oklahoma? Remember him, number 31?
Yep.
Badass player.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Played for the Cowboys.
Yep. Played for the Cowboys. I was gonna say, yep.
He came on a blitz in practice, and then Larry Allen was pulling. So Larry Allen would basically be kicking him out, and Roy Williams turned and ran. And it was like a big joke, but they used to call it Larry Allenitis, is what they would call it, Larry Allenitis, because like nobody, he's just a monster of a human being. But yeah, college football wise, yeah. Anyways, there's another great story. This builds into the Patreon.
Perfect.
Okay.
This is a segue. So I partnered up with John Kennedy from Always Irish. You can find it at patreon.com/alwaysirish. Because I've been doing this YouTube thing for like 3 years. Okay. And I got into it kind of begrudgingly, In 3 years coming into this, like I've gotten pretty good at it. It's been fun to share stories and really interact and engage with fans. But people love to hear stories. And like that Patreon format, first of all, it like makes it worth it, worth your time versus like working for free on YouTube. But there's a story. I was freshman playing on scout team, and we had an offensive formation. And it was that fullback, Jason Murray, that I mentioned. Tony Fisher, the tailback, who was like 225. And then whatever the running back. So it was like a 3-headed backfield, like a triangle. Mm-hmm. And I had to take them on. So I had to fill the gap. And it was like week 6, 7, 8 of the season. So you've got 6, 7 layers of gold paint on your helmet at that point. And I took both of them out right in the crowns of my helmet. And then that's when I found out that our helmets are actually orange underneath. It's orange plastic. But like they hit me so hard that like all that paint was gone, Oh,
man.
So, because it's like, you're on scout team. It's like, well, the card says, they put that card up. Like the card says, I got to go. But that was another hard hit too. So, yeah, but no, we're doing the Patreon. We're like a week into it. John's a super fun guy, like diehard fan. You guys are familiar. I'm sure your audience is familiar with him. And it just, it's a kind of a match made in heaven in terms of John grew up right in the same area I did. We're roughly the same age, have very similar wiring, value system, etc. So, I'm coming into it with that player perspective. And then he's really coming at it with the fan perspective. And we filmed a couple episodes and we're already like kind of button heads, and it's just fun. It's fun to watch him squirm. And it's been a lot of fun. And I think we're up to like 100 subscribers in a week. which was a goal of mine. And I think it'll just really continue to grow because we're both committed to it. And there's no shortage of ideas coming out of the two of us. And then, again, back to that fan engagement piece. Like I've got all these new followers on Twitter, at Mike Goolsby 41, and I'll hit them up and it's like, thanks for the follow. Like, you have any ideas for the show? Because we're doing it kind of for you all. And I just think it's going to be really something different. There's nothing out there like it.
Oh yeah. And that's the thing with when you're putting yourself out there is like, how can you make yourself unique? That's what Ben and I are learning that every single day. Yeah.
Yeah. And I've always, like I said, there's a lot of these Notre Dame shows. And there's a lot of redundancy. It's just two different people on screen talking about the same topic. Yeah. So I've always prided myself on trying to come up with an interesting topic that maybe somebody else hadn't thought of, or putting a different spin on it or a different perspective on it. And then the other thing, and this is true, like as an ex-captain, something that I've struggled with since I was a player. And I didn't get a lot of FaceTime with the media as a player because of my nature, because of my personality. Like, I'm just honest. So they didn't put me in front of a camera in case I'd say the wrong thing. And, the wrong thing. So, like, now as an ex-player, you want to be objectively optimistic about the team, but at the same time, I want to be authentic and be honest about what I'm seeing from a player, right? As an X's and O's guy, effort guy, culture guy, etc. So in that YouTube format, it's difficult. It's difficult to be vocal and to be outspoken and then kind of get that backlash. And after a while, it was like, well, I want this to be worth it, right? So if people really want to know, and I'm going to stick my neck out, as it were, as an ex-player, I want it to be worth it, right? So again, I hope that makes sense.
Yeah.
No, it does make sense. It makes perfect sense. Just trying to really find yourself and do what makes you feel comfortable.
Yeah.
It's not easy. It's not easy in front of a camera, man. It really isn't.
No. And yeah, you're always going to have somebody that doesn't like what you're doing. I mean, it doesn't matter if you do a perfect show or if you make perfect points or whatever. I mean, they're there. And then the ones that are the loudest are the ones that don't do anything at all.
Yeah. Well, God bless the internet. No. And again, I
mean, that's everybody's got it's not. Yeah.
Well, that's my thing, is that, like, there was times where I had people say that I wasn't a true Notre Dame man,
right?
And sort of attacking my character based off of my opinion on something. And I'm like, okay, to hell with this. I'm going to maybe pivot. So I'm still going to continue to do the YouTube show.
Right.
But this is something else that we're going to kind of add in.
Awesome.
And it's, like I said, I filmed 2 episodes with John, and it's legitimately fun. Yeah, I find myself kind of sitting back laughing. So I think, and that's the other piece to this. In this, this competitive YouTube Notre Dame football space, everybody wants to be like the X's and O's guy, and everybody wants to break down the offense. And I think that the entertainment value, like, falls short. So I've never lost sight of that in terms of, like, being on screen. You're trying to be entertaining because you're taking up people's time. They're taking time out of their day to watch my mug. So I think that Patreon space gives you a lot more freedom.
Mm-hmm.
To be creative and to bring a different energy.
Oh, yes. Well, for us, for example, we haven't exactly explored the Patreon thing yet. We've just been kind of sticking on here for the time being.
Sure.
But just wait till Halloween next week, Halloween weekend.
Oh, good. Yeah. Yeah. Full moon, all that. Yeah.
Yeah. We like to have a little fun doing we dressed up on Halloween and did a preview of the last couple of years. We've tried doing we covered the XFL briefly or the USFL, excuse me. And Ben and I did bets, and we had each other do silly things for the loser.
Oh, nice. See?
But the thing is, the problem is, though, you can't get too clowny either.
I'm gonna borrow your idea. So let's just say I make a bet with John Kennedy over, you name it. He's got to dress up as, Little Orphan Annie or something. I don't know.
Well, Ben lost all 4 bets that we did in the USFL season last year.
Well, and I have an interesting Notre Dame bet this year too. Although that's kind of going out the window, maybe for the better of my of my betting life.
Well, what's the bet? What's the Notre Mame bet?
What did we agree on?
Oh, what was that? It was like something with syrup. Oh, what was the syrup thing?
He I know what it was. Ben made a comment.
I'm trying to remember what that was about because I got mad about it because I was really mad. So I don't like when people bring up coaches and stuff. It's one thing to criticize what's going on the field. It's one thing if you they make a bonehead mistake, whatever. But when people start bringing up personal lives and stuff, and you're criticizing how they dress or how it's really that's your go-to. So I got mad. And I was like, I don't care what coaches do outside of Sean's laughing because he knows what's coming. I don't care what guys do. Okay.
Well, I don't. So get to it. What's the bet?
So
Ben made a comment saying,
I said, I don't care if you douse yourself in maple syrup. If you're winning games, who gives a shit? Who cares? You know what I'm saying? Fair enough. Sean was like, you have, if we go undefeated, was it undefeated?
Just make the playoffs.
If we make the playoffs, you have to douse yourself in maple syrup. And I was like, dude, I'm like, if we win the national title, I'm like, I'll take a bath in this stuff. I don't even.
Is that shirt on or shirt off, Ben?
I I was going to let the viewers decide that one.
Well, you might get kicked off of YouTube for something like that.
Right.
No, no below the belt or anything like that.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, so yeah, the bets thing is fun. And I lost all my bets. And all of them were like surefire too. Like they were all surefire. I'm like, there's no way this team loses. There's no way. They're like, it's not going to happen. And they all did. It was incredible.
So
that's a good idea.
So one that he still owes me 3. He did the one where he had to call a random person and ask for their hand in marriage.
That was good. That was funny.
He still has to do one show dressed as Papa Smurf.
Yeah.
He has to get his chest and his stomach waxed either at the salon or let me do it with duct tape.
Oh God.
And then the fourth one I haven't decided yet.
Yeah.
I was thinking maybe I play Gallagher and he's the one-man audience when I do the Sludge-O-Matic.
Oh God.
Yeah, Sean, you need to consult or Ben, you need to consult with somebody before you go in on these bets, brother.
Yeah, no kidding. No kidding. So anyway, well, that was awesome, Mike. Absolutely awesome having you on the show. We'll definitely we'll have a link to his to that Patreon down below.
Yeah, it'd be great. That's a good idea. Yeah.
And then obviously you can catch him on Twitter. I do believe that's your Twitter handle.
That's correct. Yeah.
As your name and all that. But we do appreciate him taking time out of his day because,
I do have to know one more thing. So one quick question. So at Geneseo, we started doing alumni games back in 2015, 2016. Haven't had one in 7 years. If we were to arrange it to have Geneseo alum play Joliet Catholic alum, Mike, would you play in that game?
For free?
It's $100 per participant.
Probably not.
That's for insurance purposes.
Probably not.
Bummer.
Probably
I would love the opportunity to try.
I'd have too big of a target on my back,
Yeah, but I really wanted to keyword try to block you because I was on the upper line.
No, that would be.
Yeah, I'd have to see the rules.
We would have a great video for the audience if that happened. Like,
I still stay in pretty good shape because I move around with these high school kids every weekend. But yeah, that you'd have to sell me on that one. That'd be tough.
It's full padded football.
As I've gotten older, man, I just have this lingering fear of like popping I tore my bicep a couple years ago.
Ooh.
Not that big of a deal. Surprisingly, it didn't hurt that bad. I was just like, damn, like I tore my bicep. But I had this fear of like popping an Achilles tendon, So like even when I train my kids, a lot of times I'll be barefoot or I'll just I won't tie my shoes so that I can't overexert. Because you kind of get into that mode where you're moving around and I'm like, okay, I don't want to push myself. Yeah, because you're 10 pounds heavier than you were when you were playing. So, I don't know, man. I don't know.
Oh, come on, Mike. Our quarterback was 49 years old.
Yeah, well, he didn't have to do nothing. He's just back there throwing the ball.
You're right.
If you've seen Geneseo's offense, you know how.
Listen, the last time, assuming we're going to wear our old uniforms, the last time I was in a Joliet Catholic uniform, I left the field as state champion. I want to be remembered.
Yeah, that's a good way to leave that.
But like Ben was saying, if that happened and you played in that game, we both did, Mike. We'd have a great video. Sean gets laid out by Mike Goolsby.
Yeah. Sean dies by Mike Goolsby. I need a new co-host.
Yeah.
Anyway, well, we appreciate it. Mike. We really
it was a lot of fun, guys.
Thanks a lot.
You're an absolute blast, and we would love to have you back for a future video.
Yeah, stay in touch, man. I'm usually doing. I kind of do these Sunday nights, sit down and carve out time to knock them out. So, I appreciate the platform. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah, and thank you so much. It's always a pleasure when a player gives us their time, and we are truly grateful for it, and we can't tell you enough how much we appreciate it.
Well, don't mention it, Sean. All good, brother.
All right. Well, on that note, everyone, I am Sean Moriarty.
I'm Benjamin Walters.
And I'm Mike Goolsby.
And thank you guys for watching. And as we always say in every video, good night, God bless, and go Irish.
Go Irish.